I woke up to a $3,000 invoice taped to my front door, and that was before I even had my morning coffee. My name is Xavier Olson, and I have lived in the Meadowbrook Estates subdivision in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, for exactly 4 years. The place seemed nice enough when my wife and I moved in, but after she passed away from cancer 2 years ago, this house became both my sanctuary and my prison. The neighborhood is one of those cookie-cutter developments where every third house looks identical, and the HOA rules are thicker than the phone book. Not that anyone uses phone books anymore, but you get the point. The invoice was printed on official HOA letterhead, complete with that gaudy logo featuring a maple tree and a house. It claimed, "I was responsible for damage to the fence that separated my property from the common area walking trail." According to the document, my negligence during the recent snowstorm had caused structural damage requiring immediate repair. The breakdown included materials, labor, and something called an emergency response fee that made up half the total. I stepped outside in my bathrobe and slippers, steam rising from my coffee mug into the February morning air. The temperature hovered around 15 degrees, and the snow from last week's blizzard still covered everything in a thick white blanket. Walking around to my backyard, I examined the fence in question. Sure enough, about 20 feet of it was completely destroyed. The wooden posts were snapped at the base, and the panels lay scattered across my yard and the walking trail like broken teeth. But here was the thing that made my blood boil. I had not done anything to that fence. I had not driven near it, hit it with my car, or done anything that could remotely cause that kind of damage. The destruction looked fresh, probably from the storm we had 3 days ago when the county declared a snow emergency. I had stayed home the entire time, watching Netflix and eating leftover pizza. I pulled out my phone and took pictures from every angle. The damage was severe, no question about that, but the pattern of destruction did not match anything I could have caused. The posts were all bent in the same direction, away from my property and toward the trail. If I had somehow hit the fence with my truck, the damage would have pushed the opposite way. My neighbor, an older gentleman named Robert, was outside scraping ice off his driveway. I walked over to his property line, careful not to slip on the packed snow. "Hey Robert, did you see what happened to my fence?" He leaned on his shovel and wiped his forehead despite the cold. "Oh yeah, that was something. Happened during the storm Tuesday night. The HOA snowplow came through around 2 in the morning. I was up because my dog needed to go out. That driver was going way too fast and I heard this huge crash. By the time I looked out my window, the plow was already gone, but your fence was demolished." My stomach dropped. The HOA plow did this, clear as day. I even mentioned it to my wife. I said they better tell you what happened, but I guess they decided to bill you instead. He shook his head in disgust. This HOA has gotten out of control since Patricia took over. Patricia Myers was the HOA president, and she fit every stereotype of a middle-aged neighborhood dictator. She had taken over the position about 18 months ago, after running on a platform of increased property values and stricter enforcement of community standards. In practice, that meant she spent her days driving around looking for violations and sending threatening letters to homeowners over the most ridiculous things. Last month, she had fined the Johnsons $200 because their garbage cans were visible from the street for more than 12 hours. I thanked Robert and went back inside to warm up. My mind was racing. If the HOA plow had caused the damage and they were trying to bill me for it, that was fraud. But I needed proof, and Robert's testimony alone might not be enough. Then I remembered something. 6 months ago, after someone had stolen packages from my front porch. I had installed a comprehensive security camera system. I had cameras covering the front door, driveway, and backyard. The backyard camera had a wide-angle lens that covered the entire fence line. I rushed to my office and logged into the security system on my computer. The software kept recordings for 30 days before automatically deleting them to save space. I navigated to Tuesday night around 2 in the morning and started the playback. The footage was dark, but my cameras had night vision capability. At exactly 2:14 in the morning, I could see the walking trail behind my fence. Everything was quiet, snow falling steadily. Then, at 2:16, the HOA snow plow appeared, its yellow lights flashing. The driver was moving fast, too fast for the conditions. As the plow approached the curve near my property, it started to slide on the ice. I watched as the driver overcorrected, and the heavy plow blade swung wide, smashing directly into my fence with tremendous force. The wooden structure never stood a chance. The plow kept going without even slowing down, leaving destruction in its wake. The entire incident took maybe 5 seconds, but it was all there in perfect high-definition video. I saved the clip to my desktop and made 3 backup copies on different devices. This was my evidence, my proof that the HOA was trying to commit insurance fraud by billing me for damage their own contractor had caused. My phone rang. It was an unknown local number, but I answered anyway. "Is this Xavier Olson?" a sharp female voice asked, speaking. "This is Patricia Myers, HOA president. I am calling regarding the invoice that was delivered to your property this morning. We need to discuss payment arrangements." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. "Patricia, I received your invoice, but I have a problem with it. I did not cause that damage. Mr. Olson, the fence is on your property line, which makes you responsible for its maintenance. The damage occurred during the storm, and our investigation shows it was due to improper snow removal on your part." "What investigation? Nobody from the HOA has spoken to me or examined my property. We have methods of determining these things. The invoice is due within 10 days, or we will place a lien on your property." My hands clenched into fists. "I have video evidence showing your snow plow driver hit my fence. The HOA caused this damage, not me." There was a long pause. "I do not know what you think you saw, Mr. Olson, but I can assure you our contractors are professionals. If you wish to dispute this invoice, you need to submit a formal written appeal to the HOA board. Until then, the charges stand." "Fine, I will submit an appeal. But I am telling you right now, I have clear video footage of what happened. We will review any evidence you wish to present. Good day, Mr. Olson." She hung up before I could respond. I spent the next hour drafting a detailed appeal letter. I described the damage, explained that I could not have caused it, included Robert's testimony, and specifically mentioned that I had video evidence proving the HOA snow plow was responsible. I attached screenshots from the video showing the plow hitting the fence and sent the entire package via certified mail to the HOA office address listed on their website. I also emailed a copy to Patricia's HOA email address. For 2 days, I heard nothing. Then, on Saturday morning, I received an email from Patricia. The message was brief and dismissive. It stated that the HOA board had reviewed my appeal and denied it. They claimed that their snow removal contractor had submitted a report confirming they did not hit any structures during the storm. The email concluded by reminding me that payment was due in 8 days. They were calling me a liar. Worse, they were doubling down on their fraud. I drove to the HOA management office, which was located in a small commercial building about 3 miles from my house. The office was only open on Saturday mornings, and when I arrived, Patricia was sitting behind the reception desk, typing on a computer. "Mr. Olson," she said without looking up, "if you are here about the fence, we have already provided our answer." "Patricia, I need you to actually look at the video evidence. I can show it to you right now on my phone." "That would not be appropriate. All evidence must be submitted through official channels." "I did submit it. I described the video in my appeal." She finally looked at me, her eyes cold. "Describing something is not the same as providing evidence. If you have video, you need to submit it properly." "Fine. How do I submit it properly?" "You can mail a DVD or USB drive to this office, and the board will review it at our next meeting." "When is the next meeting?" 2 weeks from Monday." "That is after the payment deadline." She gave me a tight smile. "Then I suggest you pay the invoice while the appeal is pending. If the board rules in your favor, you will receive a refund." I could not believe what I was hearing. "You want me to pay $3,000 for damage I did not cause, and maybe I will get it back eventually." "That is our policy." "Your policy is fraud." Her expression hardened. "Mr. Olson, I am going to give you some advice. This neighborhood has standards, and homeowners who refuse to meet their obligations face consequences. You are already on thin ice with this board. Do not make your situation worse." "Is that a threat?" "It is a statement of fact. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do." I left the office shaking with anger. This woman was unbelievable. I went home and prepared a USB drive with the video file, along with a detailed written explanation of what the footage showed. I drove back to the HOA office and slipped it through the mail slot with another letter demanding they review the evidence immediately. The following Tuesday, I received another letter from the HOA. This one was even worse than the first. It was a notice of violation, claiming that my damaged fence was an eyesore that violated community standards. I was being fined $500 and given 10 days to either repair the fence or face additional daily fines of $100. They were actually fining me for the damage their plow had caused. The audacity was breathtaking. I called my homeowner's insurance company to see if my policy covered this kind of situation. After explaining everything to my agent, she informed me that my policy had a $1,000 deductible and would not cover HOA fines. She suggested I consult with an attorney. I spent that evening researching lawyers who specialized in HOA disputes. Minnesota has specific laws governing homeowner associations, and from what I could find online, HOAs have to follow certain procedures when assessing charges and fines. I found a firm in Minneapolis called Anderson & Associates that had good reviews and experience with HOA cases. The next morning, I called their office and explained my situation to the receptionist. She scheduled me for a consultation with one of their attorneys that same afternoon. I took a half-day off from my job as a software developer and drove into the city. The lawyer's name was Jennifer Anderson, and she was a sharp woman in her early 40s who immediately inspired confidence. I sat in her office and went through the entire story, showing her all the documents, emails, and most importantly, the video footage. She watched the video 3 times, making notes on a legal pad. "This is pretty damning evidence," she said. "The video clearly shows the HOA contractor's negligence causing the damage. By trying to bill you for it, they are engaging in what could be considered fraud." That is what I thought. What can I do? We have a few options. First, we send them a letter from this firm stating that you have legal representation and that you have clear video evidence of their contractor's negligence. We demand they withdraw the invoice and the violation notice, and we also demand they repair the fence at their own expense since it is technically HOA property. Is it HOA property? The invoice said it was my responsibility. Jennifer pulled out a copy of my HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which I had emailed her before the meeting. She flipped through until she found the relevant section. According to your CC and Articus, fences on the property line between individual lots and common areas are considered common elements, which means they are HOA responsibility. So not only are they trying to make you pay for damage they caused, they are trying to make you pay for something that is not even your responsibility to maintain. My jaw dropped. Are you serious? Completely. This HOA is either incompetent or deliberately trying to defraud you. Based on your description of this Patricia Myers, I am leaning toward the latter. What happens if they ignore your letter? Then we file a lawsuit. We sue the HOA for the cost of repairs, harassment, and potentially fraud. We also file a complaint with the Minnesota Attorney General's office because HOAs are supposed to operate within certain legal boundaries, and this behavior is way over the line. How much is this going to cost me? Jennifer leaned back in her chair. My retainer for HOA cases is typically $2,500. However, if we win, which I am very confident we will given this evidence, we can demand the HOA pay your attorney fees. That is also part of Minnesota law. I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. Let's do it. I signed the retainer agreement and wrote a check. Jennifer assured me she would have a letter drafted and sent to the HOA by the end of the week. She also advised me not to pay the invoice or the fine. 2 days later, Jennifer called to tell me the letter had been sent via certified mail and email. Now we waited for the HOA's response. The response came faster than expected, but not in the way I anticipated. On Saturday morning, I found another notice taped to my door. This one informed me that I was being fined an additional $1,000 for failure to maintain my property, and for the damaged fence that had now been in its current state for over a week. The notice also stated that the HOA would be conducting a hearing to determine if my membership privileges should be suspended, which could include restricting my access to common areas. I immediately forwarded the notice to Jennifer. She called me within an hour, and I could hear the anger in her voice. They are retaliating against you for getting a lawyer. This is exactly the kind of behavior that gets HOAs in serious trouble. I am going to file a motion for an injunction on Monday morning. What does that mean? It means we go to court and ask a judge to order the HOA to stop harassing you while we sort this out. Given the evidence we have, I think we have a strong case. That Monday, Jennifer filed a lawsuit in Hennepin County District Court against the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowner Association. The complaint outlined everything that had happened, included the video evidence, and requested damages, attorney fees, and an injunction preventing the HOA from taking any action against me related to the fence. The court scheduled a hearing for the injunction for the following week. In the meantime, I started receiving phone calls and emails from my neighbors. Word had spread through the neighborhood that I was suing the HOA, and reactions were mixed. Some neighbors were supportive. Robert stopped by with his wife to tell me they thought I was doing the right thing. A woman named Sarah, who lived 3 houses down, told me she had been fined $800 the previous year for having the wrong shade of paint on her front door, even though she had gotten the color pre-approved by the architectural committee. She was thrilled someone was finally standing up to Patricia. Other neighbors were less friendly. I got anonymous notes in my mailbox calling me a troublemaker and saying I was hurting property values. Someone left a nasty message on my voicemail saying I should just pay the fine and stop being difficult. But the worst came from Patricia herself. She started showing up at my house unannounced, claiming she needed to inspect my property for additional violations. I had installed a video doorbell as part of my security system, so I had footage of her coming by at odd hours, taking pictures of my house and walking around my yard. When I showed this footage to Jennifer, she added a harassment claim to our lawsuit. The hearing for the injunction arrived on a cold Thursday morning in early March. I took the day off work and met Jennifer at the courthouse. We were in one of the smaller courtrooms, and the judge was a woman named Judge Helen Morrison, who had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. Patricia was there representing the HOA, along with a lawyer she had apparently hired at the last minute. His name was Dennis Carter, and he looked like he had not had time to fully review the case. He kept asking Patricia questions in whispered tones while we waited for the hearing to begin. Judge Morrison called the case, and Jennifer stood to present our argument. She laid out the facts clearly and concisely, then asked permission to show the video evidence. The judge agreed, and the bailiff set up a laptop so the footage could be displayed on a screen. The courtroom went silent as the video played, showing the snowplow sliding and crashing into my fence. It was even more dramatic watching it in a courtroom setting. When it finished, Judge Morrison looked at Patricia. "Does the HOA dispute the authenticity of this video?" Dennis Carter stood up. "Your Honor, we have not had sufficient time to have the video analyzed by an expert. Mr. Carter, this is a hearing for a temporary injunction, not a full trial. The question is whether the plaintiff has shown a likelihood of success on the merits, and whether he will suffer irreparable harm without an injunction. That video appears to show exactly what Mr. Olson claims it shows. Do you have any evidence suggesting it has been altered or fabricated?" "No, Your Honor, but we would like the opportunity to investigate. You will have that opportunity during discovery. For now, I am granting the temporary injunction. The HOA is ordered to cease all collection activity related to the fence repair invoice, and all fines imposed on Mr. Olson related to the fence. The HOA is also ordered to cease any harassment of Mr. Olson, including unscheduled inspections of his property. This injunction will remain in effect until the conclusion of this case. Furthermore, the HOA is responsible for repairing the fence within 30 days, as it appears to be common area property based on the CC and Articus submitted into evidence." Patricia stood up, her face red. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. We have a right to manage our community." Judge Morrison gave her a sharp look. "Miss Myers, you are not a party to this proceeding in your individual capacity, so please sit down. Your attorney can speak for the HOA." Dennis Carter pulled Patricia back into her seat. "Your Honor, we respectfully disagree with this ruling and request a stay pending appeal." Request denied. My order stands. We will set a date for a full hearing on the merits. In the meantime, the HOA should consider settling this case, because based on what I have seen today, Mr. Olson has a very strong claim. This hearing is adjourned. Walking out of that courtroom felt like the first time I had taken a full breath in weeks. Jennifer was pleased with the outcome but reminded me that this was just the first step. The HOA could still fight us at trial, and there was no guarantee of what the final outcome would be, but I felt vindicated. A judge had watched the same video I had and agreed that the HOA was in the wrong. Over the next week, several things happened. First, a repair crew showed up and fixed my fence. They did it quickly and professionally, and the new fence actually looked better than the old one. Second, I stopped receiving harassing notices from the HOA. Third, and most surprisingly, I got a call from Dennis Carter asking if I would be willing to discuss a settlement. Jennifer and I had a conference call with Dennis the following Monday. He opened by saying the HOA was willing to withdraw all fines and invoices related to the fence and issue a formal apology. In exchange, I would drop the lawsuit. Jennifer did not let him off that easy. That is not enough, Dennis. Your client has caused my client significant stress, cost him time and money, and damaged his reputation in the community. We want the HOA to pay his attorney fees, which currently total about $4,000. We also want a guarantee that the HOA will not retaliate against him in any way going forward, and we want Patricia Myers removed as HOA president. I do not have the authority to demand a board member resign. Then take it to your client. We will give you 1 week to respond. Otherwise, we proceed to trial, and I promise you, we will ask for much more than attorney fees. We will seek punitive damages for fraud and harassment. Dennis said he would get back to us. 3 days later, he called with a counteroffer. The HOA would pay $5,000 to cover my attorney fees and any other costs I had incurred. They would withdraw all fines and invoices. They would issue a written apology and a statement to all homeowners clarifying that the fence damage was caused by their contractor. And they would agree not to take any action against me for the next 5 years that was not directly related to a legitimate CC&R violation. The one thing they would not do was remove Patricia as president. Dennis explained that the HOA board did not have the power to unilaterally remove an elected officer without a vote of the membership. Jennifer and I discussed it. The settlement was not perfect, but it was pretty good. I would get my money back, plus enough to cover Jennifer's fees and still have some left over. The HOA would publicly admit fault, and I would have legal protection against retaliation. What about Patricia? I asked Jennifer. She is just going to keep abusing her power with other homeowners. That is true, but you cannot force the HOA to remove her. However, there is nothing stopping you from organizing your neighbors to vote her out at the next election. That idea intrigued me. When is the next election? Jennifer checked the HOA bylaws. According to this, board elections are held every year in May. That is only 2 months away. I agreed to the settlement with one additional condition. The HOA had to hold a special community meeting within 30 days to discuss the incident and allow homeowners to ask questions. Dennis was not happy about it, but he agreed. The settlement agreement was finalized the following week. I signed it. Jennifer filed the dismissal with the court, and I received a check for $5,000 from the HOA. The written apology arrived a few days later, and it was as grudging as you would expect, but it was in writing and on official letterhead. The community meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday evening in mid-March at the local community center. I showed up early and was surprised to see the place was packed. Apparently, word had gotten around about what happened, and a lot of homeowners wanted answers. Patricia was there, sitting at a table at the front of the room with the other board members. She looked uncomfortable, which gave me some satisfaction. The meeting started, and Patricia tried to rush through a prepared statement about how the fence incident was an unfortunate accident and that the matter had been resolved. But before she could move on to other business, Robert stood up. "I have a question," he said loudly. "Why did the HOA try to bill Xavier for damage your own plow caused? And why did you keep charging him even after he provided video proof?" The room erupted in conversation. Patricia banged a gavel on the table. "Please maintain order." The situation with Mr. Olson was a misunderstanding. Our contractor initially reported that they had not hit any structures, and we relied on that report. Sarah stood up next. "That does not explain why you kept fining him after he showed you video evidence. That sounds like harassment to me." Other homeowners started chiming in, and it became clear that a lot of people had grievances with how Patricia was running the HOA. One man complained about being fined for having his trash cans out 30 minutes too early. A woman talked about being threatened with a lien because her mailbox post was slightly faded. Another person mentioned being fined for having a garden gnome in their front yard that violated the decorative items policy. The meeting devolved into a shouting match. Patricia kept trying to maintain control, but the anger in the room was palpable. Finally, one of the other board members, a quiet older man named George, stood up and took the microphone from Patricia. "I think it is clear that many homeowners are unhappy with how this HOA has been operating," George said. "I have been on this board for 7 years, and I have to say, I share some of these concerns. I think we need new leadership." Patricia looked like she had been slapped. "George, you cannot be serious." "I am very serious. I am calling for a vote of no confidence in your leadership as president. If the board agrees, we can appoint an interim president until the election in May." The other 3 board members looked at each other. One of them, a middle-aged man named Frank, nodded. "I second that motion." Patricia tried to argue, citing bylaws and procedures, but it was too late. The board voted 3-1 to remove her as president, with only Patricia voting against the motion. George was appointed interim president, and the meeting finally adjourned. I left that meeting feeling better than I had in months. Justice had been served, not just for me but for the entire community. In the weeks that followed, things started to change in Meadowbrook Estates. George proved to be a much more reasonable leader. He sent out a newsletter apologizing for the aggressive enforcement tactics and promised a review of all recent fines to make sure they were justified. Several fines were refunded. The May election came, and Patricia tried to run for the board again, but she lost badly. A slate of new members was elected, all of whom campaigned on bringing common sense back to the HOA. George was elected president by the new board, and one of the first things they did was hire a new management company that was less focused on fines and more focused on actual community improvement. As for Patricia, I saw her around the neighborhood occasionally, but she never made eye contact. I heard through the grapevine that she was considering moving to a different community, somewhere where she could start fresh. I did not wish her ill, but I was not sorry to see her influence diminish. My fence remained standing, sturdy and strong. Every time I looked at it, I was reminded that standing up for yourself matters, even when it is difficult and uncomfortable. The security camera footage had saved me from a significant injustice, and the legal system, while slow, had ultimately worked the way it was supposed to. Robert and I became good friends. We started having beers on his back patio every couple of weeks, talking about neighborhood politics and complaining about Minnesota winters. Sarah joined us sometimes, and slowly, a core group of reasonable neighbors formed who were committed to making sure the HOA never again became a tool for petty tyranny. One Saturday afternoon in June, I was mowing my lawn when a car pulled up to my house. A young couple got out and walked up my driveway. They introduced themselves as potential buyers who were looking at houses in the neighborhood. "We heard there was some drama with the HOA here," the woman said nervously. "Is it true?" I smiled. "There was drama, but it got sorted out. The HOA is under new management now, and they are actually pretty reasonable. I would not hesitate to recommend this neighborhood anymore." The couple seemed relieved and thanked me for my honesty. As they drove away, I realized that my fight had actually improved my community in a real, tangible way. That felt good. Summer arrived, and with it came neighborhood barbecues and pool parties at the community center. The atmosphere was different now, lighter somehow. People were not constantly worried about getting fined for minor infractions. Kids played in yards without parents stressing about toys being visible from the street. It felt like an actual community instead of a police state. I was invited to join the HOA board myself, but I declined. I had no interest in that kind of responsibility. However, I did agree to serve on the Architectural Review Committee, where I could help ensure that homeowners were treated fairly when they wanted to make changes to their properties. My security cameras remained active, quietly recording everything. I checked the footage occasionally, more out of habit than necessity. The cameras had saved me once, and I figured there was no harm in keeping them running. One evening in August, I was sitting on my back deck, looking at the fence and sipping a beer when my phone rang. It was Jennifer Anderson, my lawyer. "Xavier, I wanted to give you a heads up about something," she said. "I just got a call from the Minnesota Attorney General's office. They have opened an investigation into Patricia Myers." "What? Why?" Apparently, after our case became public, several other homeowners from other HOAs came forward with similar stories. Patricia was president of 2 other HOAs before Meadowbrook, and in both cases, there were allegations of financial impropriety. The AG is looking into whether she was using her position to enrich herself or commit fraud. "Are you serious?" "Completely. They may want to talk to you about your experience with her. Would you be willing to cooperate?" "Absolutely." 2 weeks later, an investigator from the Attorney General's office came to my house. I gave a detailed statement about everything that had happened, provided copies of all the documents, and showed them the security footage. The investigator thanked me and said they would be in touch. Months went by, and I did not hear anything else about the investigation. Life continued in its pleasant, uneventful way. I started dating a woman I met through a mutual friend, and for the first time since my wife passed away, I felt like I was moving forward with my life. In December, almost a year after the fence incident, I got a call from the investigator. Patricia Myers had been charged with multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement related to her activities in several HOAs. The evidence showed she had been creating fake invoices and pocketing the money, fining homeowners for violations that did not exist, and manipulating HOA budgets to direct money to companies she had financial interests in. "Your case was actually what broke this open," the investigator told me. "When you stood up to her and got a lawyer, it created a public record that other people could find. That led to more complaints, which led to our investigation." Patricia eventually pled guilty to several charges and was sentenced to 3 years in prison, along with restitution payments to the various HOAs and homeowners she had defrauded. The total amount she had stolen was estimated to be over $200,000. When I heard the news, I felt a mix of emotions. I was glad she was being held accountable, but I also felt sad that someone had thrown their life away for money and power in a suburban homeowner association. It seemed like such a waste. The story made the local news, and for a few days, I got calls from reporters wanting to interview me. I declined most of them, but I did agree to talk to one journalist from a local newspaper who was writing a larger piece about HOA abuses and how homeowners could protect themselves. The article came out in January, exactly 1 year after I found that invoice on my door. It featured my story prominently and included advice from Jennifer about what homeowners should do if they find themselves in similar situations. The article went viral locally, and I started getting messages from people all over Minnesota thanking me for speaking out. I never expected to become some kind of minor local celebrity for fighting my HOA, but I guess stranger things have happened. The attention died down after a few weeks and life returned to normal. Looking back on everything that happened, I learned some important lessons. First, document everything. If I had not had those security cameras, I would have had a much harder time proving my case. Second, do not be afraid to get a lawyer when you are being treated unfairly. Yes, it costs money, but sometimes it is the only way to hold powerful people accountable. Third, stand up for yourself even when it is uncomfortable, because you never know who else you might be helping in the process. My fence still stands, a constant reminder of that strange chapter in my life. Every time I look at it, I remember the morning I found that invoice, the anger I felt, the vindication of that courtroom hearing, and the satisfaction of watching justice prevail. The neighborhood is thriving now under its new leadership. Property values have actually increased, despite Patricia's predictions that my lawsuit would hurt everyone. The HOA is still there, still setting rules and collecting dues, but it operates with transparency and fairness. Violations are handled with warnings and dialogue instead of immediate fines. Disputes are resolved through conversation instead of threats. I still live in the same house, and I plan to stay here for the foreseeable future. This place has become truly home, not just because of the building itself, but because of the community we have built. The fight was worth it. Every stressful moment, every dollar spent, every anxious night wondering if I was doing the right thing. As I sit here now, almost 2 years after that snowy February morning, I can honestly say I would do it all again. Standing up to bullies and frauds is never easy, but it is always necessary. The alternative is to let them win, to let them hurt people, to let injustice stand unchallenged. My security cameras continue recording, the fence stands firm, and life in Meadowbrook Estates goes on. The snow will come again this winter, as it always does in Minnesota, and the HOA will hire a new snow removal company, one that hopefully drives more carefully. And if they do not, well, I have cameras. I am not worried. The whole experience taught me that ordinary people can fight back against institutional power when they have evidence, determination, and a good lawyer. It taught me that communities are only as good as the people who are willing to stand up and demand accountability. And it taught me that a $3,000 fraudulent invoice taped to your door on a cold February morning can be the beginning of something much larger than you ever imagined. I am proud of what I did, proud that I fought back, and proud that my small act of defiance helped expose a con artist who was hurting innocent people. Sometimes the system works. Sometimes justice prevails. Sometimes the little guy wins. And sometimes, a damaged fence and a security camera are all you need to take down a tyrant.